I was real fortunate to be born in Fannin County. This is one of the most desirable places in the state of Texas, or maybe even in the United States. My early years, my parents were Albie Wilbur Champion and Evie Christian Champion, and I was born on September the 14th, 1914. I had one brother. His name was Clovis Champion. He was about 18 months older than I was. My parents were hard-working people. We lived on a farm, and my daddy was always involved in whatever happened in the little community that we lived in. I remember he was being on the school board, and then also he attended the same little country school that we attended. In fact, I went to this New Harmony School, which was a one-teacher school, until I was in the 7th grade. I went on, okay. And really, I was just pretty much, everything that happened in the little community was a part of our social life. There wasn't a great deal. We had a church, and we went to that little church. I went to this little country school, which was a one teacher. I imagine there was about at least 30 students, or 30 that attended, which was from the 1st grade on up through the 8th grade. And I remember that I've always loved school. I could hardly wait until I could get started to school. And then I remember the advantage of in a little one teacher school, because you could hear what the other classes did. I finished the work that I was given, my homework or whatever I was supposed to be doing, but then I also listened to other classes, what they were doing. We had a big pot-bellied stove right in the middle of the classroom. Also, I have some perfect attendance records that we had, and we lived about a mile from the school, and my brother and I walked. Somewhere along the way, we'd have other children that would join us and walk with us. And perfect attendance was something, because a lot of times it was rainy and cold, muddy. The roads were either dusty or muddy, depending on the weather. The schools only lasted about 6 or 7 months. A lot of it depended on the amount of money that was available for the little country schools. I remember looking back at it, we were really limited on books. I think we had our little textbooks and whatever, our little math and our English probably and our social studies. But as far as our library, they weren't available. But I enjoyed those on up through the 7th grade, on up through the 6th grade. And in the 7th grade, we moved to town. My daddy became a cotton weaver, and he had a limited education at that same little school that I had, so I don't know exactly when the school was organized or when it was built. But he went on to be, I guess you'd say he was self-taught, because he became a tax assessor, and then he also, not an elected one, but for a general area. He also was elected a cotton weaver, which involved a great deal of figures about weighing and to whom the cotton belonged and all of that. So my father might not be able to use a formula to solve a problem, but he came out with the right answer. So that was my early years. And when we moved to town, I was in the 7th grade, and anyone that knows anything about school, we know that the 7th grade is one of the most difficult ways, partly because of our age, and then partly because of the curriculum, I suppose. But I had the best teacher. I had Miss Blanche Kane for a teacher. And I was a little apprehensive about moving into going to town school, thinking possibly that I wasn't smart enough, or that I didn't, I wouldn't do well with them. However, right off I made friends. There was 4 girls that we became real close to, and I stayed with them. We stayed together a great deal. We had a lot in common, and so we were friends on up through high school, and then even going into college. So my school years and my high school, I know that we all had a good time. We had a high school paper. Really it was a newspaper, and I was elected the fun editor of it. So I had a bit of a sense of humor. My daddy had a wonderful sense of humor, but my schoolwork on up through high school, I finished in 1932, and I think there was about 25 of us in the class, and as far as I know, I'm the last one.
You've outlasted all of your classmates.
All my classmates are gone. They have all passed away. And anyway, when we finished high school, it was in 32. And if you know anything about the Depression, which we hear a great deal about it now, I lived through it. We were in the middle of the Depression. But back to my growing up years on the farm. If it was time to pick cotton, we all picked cotton. If it was time to chop cotton, we chopped cotton. Also, one of the last things we did to the crops was that we went through and cut the weeds out of them. That get it ready for the harvest. We didn't go to town very often. There wasn't any occasion to go to town. I remember that we had a surrey. I don't know if it had the fringe on top. I don't remember any fringe, but we had a surrey. And then we went in the wagon. Now the wagon was as you can imagine, the surrey and the wagon were both slow. You don't hurry. You have to give yourself plenty of time. Now in 1925, my father bought a Model T. Now we thought that would just solve everything. We've got a car, but not so, because with a car you've got to have pretty good roads. Now if it rained, you didn't go. The roads were pretty much
Mud?
graded. They were pretty flat. If it rained, you just got stuck. But we didn't attempt to go. However, our social life in this little New Harmony community, there was always something to do. Now, I mean, most of it was work. We had our garden, and then we had the cows and the pigs and whatever. So it was just a community effort with everything. And I remember that when somebody had a baby, when they called a doctor, they called my mama. Now, I'm not sure what she did. She might have just held a lamp, but anyway, she was there when the baby was born. Also, when there was a death, the local people pretty well took care of it. We didn't have an undertaker at that time, or I guess there might have been one, but we didn't use one. But I remember one time this man died, and so the men went in and they took a door down and they laid him out on that door, and then they dressed him or whatever needed to be done, and then they dug the grave, and then we buried him. So it was as simple as that. I mean, there was no outside help at that particular time. And but back to my school, back to this little one teacher school. Like I said, we might have had, there was 2 or 3 in my class, but one time a girl came in, a new family moved in, and so of course you always want to know, well, what is your name? Her name was Lucille, Hiawatha, Juanita, Sophia, Savannah, Willie, Georgia, Pauline, White. Now, 2 or 3 people will say, now I remember that girl, or that lived out there at the time, but said, I don't know what her name was, but said Muriel knows. So somehow that name has stuck with me since I was 10 years old. Her name is Lucille Hiawatha, Juanita, Sophia. But anyway, that, like at school and at work, that pretty well took care of us. We lived out in the country, then we moved to town in the school, and I did all right. I finished high school, like I said, in 32. Wanted to go to college. Several in my class were going to go to college, and of course I wanted to go.
Right.
But there wasn't money to go. Now the best I remember, my daddy borrowed enough money for my tuition, I guess. Now at that time, over at Commerce, the college over there, they had apartments, and I'm pretty sure there weren't any rules or regulations, because I ended up with a girl sharing one room apartment. We had a little gas jet, a little 2-burner jet. We slept in the same room as the cooking and all. It was just a little one room apartment. We went home on weekends, and usually we took enough food back to last us until the next week. Till the next weekend. Now then, I'm pretty sure by the time Friday come, if any of us, we'd had to try to find a dime. Not any of us had any money. Money was one that we just didn't have it. The best I remember, I had 2 dresses, and one of them was a suit. It was a 2-piece suit, and it was made out of sugar sacks. Now, it was sugar sacks. It was kind of a fabric. I'm sure you don't remember, but anyway, it was, a lot of people had sugar sack dresses. The fabric could be dyed, and mine was dyed red, and I had that, and I had a dress. I don't remember what the
The other one,
yeah.
the other dress was?
But not any of us had any money. You know, it just wasn't, this didn't exist. Well, I ended up going to school for a year, and I got a provisional teaching certificate.
Okay.
I was so proud of that. I was just barely 18 years old. I finished high school at 17, and but I got a provisional certificate, and I was so pleased with that. But at that time, there was more teachers than there were the little country schools, which was what I would have been eligible to teach in. And I ended up that they had an adult school, the government did, and I don't know exactly what all took place, but I know that we had to enroll adults, which I did. You know, I enrolled my mother and daddy, and I taught in the house where we lived. And people came. Now it was important for them to come because I had to keep up an average, we'll say. But anyways, some of them were so faithful. Of course, they were out in the country. There wasn't anything else for them to do. So young people just came, and I had to come up and bottom, and it was the county superintendent's office and get books. But several of them have told me about, they still, some of them around that they said, I remember it. And sometime there was one little adult school in Ladonia, so we had spelling bees and things. Probably that was a form of entertainment, which I liked that, and I did that for a year. I guess that was whatever when I first got my teaching certificate. I did that for a year, but then of course I had in the back of my mind to go back to school when I could and when I had the money. And the next year I got a teach in a two-teacher school, which was Bledsoe over by Dial. And I taught there for a couple of years, and I was just barely 18, I mean, at that particular time. But I have such special memories of my teaching, and of course, being 18, I didn't have any younger brothers or sisters, and I was, I don't know if you know about the Ladies, it has that big farmhouse house.
Yes.
Well, I knew Tilt Lottie, which was that Mrs. or Daddy's or whatever her name is now. Tilt was her grandfather or great-grandfather. And I have met her, and we've talked about getting together because I could tell her Tilt was just a young man at that time. But I had, like I've told them all the time, I always got the good students. So I taught first, second, third, and fourth grade. And one time a little girl, she had this real thin hair, you know, and I said, Geraldine, if you'll tell your mother to trim your hair, it might get, you know, thicker. She came back the next morning, and she was from a big family, and I'm sure who talked the loudest is the one that got heard. So Geraldine said, Miss Burl, my mama said to tell you that if you want my hair cut, just cut it yourself. I set the little thing up on the corner of my desk, and I cut her hair. After that, I taught there for 2 years. The mother would send me word, well, Geraldine's hair needs to be cut. So I cut Geraldine's hair for 2 years.
For 2 years.
And then Walter Earl Lee had a dog. The dog's name was Lucy. Well, Lucy was as faithful as could be to come into school. I should have given Lucy a report card, but I didn't.
That's cute.
But
So
I have
Lucy
such
came to school.
special memories of all those children. And of course, we were limited on what we had to play with. But, and I taught my grandson, I need to go back and tell a little bit about my family.
Yeah.
Well, let me finish this about this little two-teacher school.
Okay.
But anyway, Walter Earl's Lucy came to school every day. You know, that was just a regular. We played with marbles, you know, when the weather was so we could get out.
This is Jacqueline White of the Fannin County Historical Commission. Today I'm going to be interviewing Ms. Muriel Burleson of Ladonia, and she's going to talk about her life in the area. Thank you. Ms. Burleson.
3 years ago that the town decided that, some of my former students and all planned to have a celebration. So we had a Muriel Burleson week, and then we had a Muriel Burleson day, and then I had some of my former students that spoke. Also, our senator came and they presented me with one from a plaque from the state, from the school, and from the city. And then I have plaques that have been given me from the Masonic Lodge. And one year I was outstanding person in the county, and Leon, which was our mayor, told me, said, let's go up to Denison and to a fish fry. And we ate and you had all the trimmings and all, and of course I enjoyed it. And then they began to tell about people, and they'd been talked about somebody, and that's when I had been publishing these books. And I thought, well, who are they talking about, And then they called my name, that I was the one that was received the outstanding person in the county.
Oh, nice.
And in this celebration that they had it at the church, and they had these speakers and all. And in my birthday, not last birthday, but the one before that, our church was built in 1910, and it has people's names in little plaques in little areas, on it, of people that gave. And so they surprised me with putting my name on one of those, and not anything had been put on there since 1910.
Wow.
And so they put my name on one of those for my faithfulness.
Nice.
And,
That's an honor.
It was very honored, very honored.
It sounds like you've had a wonderful, wonderful life.
Oh, I have, and I still have it now. I've got up on the table. I have things going all the time.
That's
I'm
good.
working on.
That keeps you going, and it keeps you
it
happy.
It does.
Yeah.
I was just so pleased to have this tape, or this disc is what it's called now. And my grandson that lives at the engineer, the last time I was with him, which was about 6 weeks ago, he said, "Now, Mommy, I want you to write something down for me to have about you." And so I'll let him listen to this or whatever. And it's just a pleasure for me to share this. And so many people have been a part of my life that I can't even think about, not being a part of. And I think it was, I'm not sure which one it was. It said that I'm a part of all that I have met, and surely I am. But thank you so much.
Oh, I've enjoyed visiting with you.